series with Mandy and Sarah. Hi. I hope we're live. I hope it's working. Let us know if you can hear us. Last time it was a little iffy, but we're glad you're here. And do you have any fears about birth? I know that
the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. We bet. We bet the answer is yes. So we are going to blow your mind. If you have fears about birth, we are going to call BS on the fact that they are hurting you and harming you if you have them, because all of the scary stuff we hear about birth is scary. Everyone has fears. So we're going to blow your mind today with how they are actually clues. And I love how Sarah talks about this. So I can hear some feedback. Is that your Facebook?
No.
All right. I'm just going with that. So let us know when you arrive. Let us know who's watching, and let us know when you are due. We just came from, that's what Sarah's doing, is sharing our video. Oh yeah, you can share our video too. You can totally give us thumbs up and share it with your pregnant friends. We've been meeting,
non-pregnant friends,
or your non-pregnant friends. Friends who like real talk about birth fears.
Yes.
So we were just talking, Sarah is putting together the coping kits that are going out today and tomorrow for our Fearless Birth Delivered class. We're celebrating, except it's kind of sad. We only have 3 spots left. And today is the last day for the early bird price. So you got to get in on that. Comment if you're already in. Let us know if you need that link and we will show that. Hello, Brenda. Look what we can do.
I know, I love it. It's so
looking good. Glad you're here. Okay, so Sarah, tell us why. Tell us what is going on with your perspective of fears about birth are actually okay.
Yes. So fear is, when we're talking about birth, what we want to do is we want to stay in our rest and digest, right? So we want to make sure that we are in a good headspace where we can let our bodies take over and do what they need to do to birth our baby. But a majority of us live our lives in the fight or flight, in a stress, with all the stress going on. I mean, our day-to-day lives are spent stressed out. I mean, especially during this time.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is figure out how to stay in the rest and digest. However, in order to do that, we need to figure out what's causing fear. And a lot of times, whenever we're fearful about something, or whenever we don't know about something, we're fearful, right? So, can't, like I said in the other one, you can't slay a dragon you don't know. You just can't. So when we look at birth, a lot of times, since we don't learn about birth, we're scared. We don't know what to expect. We've heard stories from mom. We've heard stories from our neighbor. We've heard stories from the people at work. And these stories can be great. These stories can be scary. These stories can be different than what you imagined your birth to look like. It can cause a lot of feelings, right? And this is something that we do. We listen to these stories throughout our whole lives, even on like in the movies, on television.
Our parents tell us
and
what they remember.
Yeah. And so we have this like deeply ingrained idea of what birth is going to be like, or what birth could be like, or what birth is supposed to be like. So fear, while it is deeply ingrained in us, like I said, we can learn more to try and learn the dragon that we're going to be slaying.
Yeah. So it's not like behind this veil, like once I get there, I'll figure it out.
Right.
We don't see birth either.
Mm-hmm.
Where we used to like be together and, like you went to your cousin's house to have a baby. Right? And everyone lived near each other, and you saw your mom having babies and you saw your sisters having babies.
Yeah. And this was a
common thing. Don't see it anymore.
No. And it's been very, birth has been very medicalized. And so it's like this big mystifying, is that the right word? Mystical, mystifying. You get what I mean. But it's like this big thing where none of us know what to do. People, even when I had my first baby, I went to the hospital. I was having like really irregular contractions. I had no idea what they were supposed to feel like. I wasn't even in actual labor. I was just having dehydration contractions.
Yeah.
They asked me if I wanted to have my baby that day, and I said yes because I'm 40 weeks pregnant, don't feel like being pregnant anymore. I'm in pain. I'm like, whatever you have to do to give me something to not be in pain. They never checked my urine. They never offered me IV, or they never gave me IV fluids. I mean, there's a lot of things that they could have done differently that would have kept me from going into labor, or I mean, for being induced unknowingly. But yeah, they were just like, you want to have this baby today? And I said, yes, I do want to have this baby today. Who wouldn't say yes?
Right.
No?
And you're not getting that information in prenatal appointments. Like we
Right.
think we're going to. They're just all so short.
Yeah. And so, so we went into the other room, and what I thought was, this is a procedure, kind of like whenever you go in to have a surgery or have a procedure done. You just go in, they take your vitals, they do this prep, they wheel you in, like it's just conveyor belt. And I got in there and they were like, okay, we're going to start your Pitocin, we're going to break your waters. Well, and I'm like, okay, because I just didn't know. I just didn't know. I didn't have any fears going into that birth because I completely and blindly trusted, which I now see is almost worse than if I would have had some fears and skepticism.
Right. Because you would have asked more questions. Your nurse may have picked up on like, you're really tense. What's going on? Can I answer some questions for you?
Yeah. And it would have, I think, had I known more, I think it would have been really, it would have really changed the way things happened. But I mean, this is when we're talking about fear being a good thing, because whenever we're fearful and we do put the power into learning and really figuring out what that dragon is, now our fears have become motivators to have the birth that we want to have.
Ooh.
And so our fears, we can use those fears and say, why do I feel this way? Why am I fearing this?
Yeah.
This might be why I fear this. This might be why I fear this. Writing down all of our fears and thinking about them and figuring out where they're from. Are they even evidence-based? Or are they
myths?
Are
Do they even happen anymore?
Yeah. Is this even something that would be applicable in my situation? Like, how likely is this to happen? What are the risks of this happening? What are my individual risks of this happening? So there's a lot of different things that we can use our fears to be productive. Fears are not a horrible thing. They're actually freaking gold.
They're gold if you can find ways to safely, securely, confidently. You don't ever feel confident digging into fears, but if you have help,
yes,
you can do it. You're not alone.
and that's so important too, because fear, while it can be very productive, it can also be very convincing. Very convincing. So while we're looking at our fears, it's easy to be like, the evidence is telling me this. My fear is telling me this. I don't know which one to believe, because fear is super convincing and really hard to fight. So whenever we have somebody with us saying, but this is what the information, the evidence is telling us. This is what your situation is. This is the risks and benefits. This is how those might change for you. Now we have somebody else on our team. So instead of me carrying the sword around by myself, trying to slay this dragon, I've got my team behind me to help me, so that I don't feel like I'm alone. And there's power in numbers. It helps give us confidence when we have other people saying, you know what, that fear, it's real and it's valid, but it's not truth.
Yeah. And it's different than it can be very different than your like gut or your instinct.
Yes.
So talking it out, you can determine. So Ashley, hey Ashley, I'll see you in a week. Let us know your fears.
Yes. Tell us some of
Let
your
us
fears.
Yeah, write them down right now.
What I really love is I do this with my clients, and sometimes they'll write down their fears and they don't really talk it through, or they just kind of use it for their own, and that's fine. I'm not here to like be like, you have to tell me all of your fears.
Right.
But when I go through the fears with them, when they want to kind of dig in, sometimes they find fears that they didn't even know were there. And they're like, I thought I feared this, but actually, like, it's way over here, and this is where the root is. And this
Mhm.
comes from like way back in my childhood or this comes from a movie, or this comes from a story that I heard when I was 12 years old. Like, it's insane how much you can, by just writing it down and learning what your fears are and getting comfortable with them and like getting uncomfortable with them.
It's uncomfortable.
It is so uncomfortable, but getting uncomfortable with them and really like digging in and being like, okay, so now I know what it is. So let's list XYZ.
Oh my gosh, I got chills. Who's feeling this? Who's feeling this? Put a heart, because I just highlighted Ashley's comment because I mentioned it. I got chills because this is such great like trauma informed work. This is work that we both do privately on Zoom with clients, but also in our class, we're going to be able to do this starting August 19th, because knowing where fears come from means that you can then own more of the outcome. You can come up with strategies. You can get more control over your situation and actually find out how to do that, how to make choices over it, how to decide, how to communicate with your provider, how to avoid certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
So, one more before we talk a little more about what's coming up and share some more of these comments. You said get your team behind you. Um, oh wow, Megan. I like didn't mean to click on that, but boom, here's Megan's. Um, who's
Yeah.
the team that you're talking about?
Oh, so sorry, I was reading the comments.
That's why I took it away.
Because I want to shout out Sarah Brown because I freaking love her. She's awesome. Um, so so obviously your provider is part of your team, right?
Okay. Yep.
Um, so your provider's part of your team. The nursing staff is going to be part of your team, but these are probably strangers that
Yep.
you haven't met before you're in labor and vulnerable and feeling like you've already made your list of preferences and like this isn't something that they're familiar with. So it's kind of like they can be on your team or they can feel like they're not on your team. You're not really sure until you get there.
Right.
But your birth team isn't always just who's with you in labor. This is going to count. What's going to count as part of your birth team are people who prepare you, help you prepare, including your childbirth educators. Here we are.
Here we are.
Your childbirth educators. This can come from family and friends who may have similar views of your birth as you do. Definitely not going to be family and friends who don't agree with decisions that you would make, because that works against you and really plays on your fears and doesn't help you conquer your fears.
Mm-hmm.
So finding people, really just whoever you want to be a part of your team, who's going to support you, who's going to help you during pregnancy, during birth, during your postpartum period. Those are the people who are going to be part of your team. And it can be whoever you want it to be, really. You decide. You get to make this. It's not just your partner, because that's just what we always see. It's not just your provider and your nursing team, because that's what we think about whenever we think of like birth team, because that's the staff. It's all of the people who you get behind you to rally and help.
Your doula.
Yeah, your doula. Why did I not say doula? I'm a doula.
I was like, you're a doula, so you do this.
This is literally my job.
Your childbirth educator and also your doula.
Right. Yeah, no, doulas are important too. So doulas can do antenatal work, so they can work with you throughout your pregnancy to help you with like if you're feeling really I work with a lot of people who are pregnant and have a lot of anxiety. So instead of calling their office like every like 3 hours, they text
Right.
me.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, is this normal? And so I can send them stuff like, this is what this usually is. But of course, you always go back to your provider if you have concerns.
Yeah.
Caveat. And then there's also your labor and birth doula who can help you physically, emotionally, informationally throughout your labor and birth. And then there's also postpartum doulas, which not a lot of people know about postpartum doulas.
Oh, totally.
Which are,
but doulas are hired to support your
yes.
decisions. So
Yeah.
they are like padding your team.
Yes. And doulas, so I think there's a big misconception that doulas are only there for like natural, unmedicated, like intervention-free births. And that's not the case at all. Doulas are there, good doulas are there to support you in whatever decision you feel like you want to make, regardless if it's a decision that they would make personally or that they have made personally. So they're literally there just to be like your cheerleader, with also helping. It's more than just your cheerleader, but you get what I'm saying.
They know you. They can help you through the in the moment situations.
Yes.
We got you. So I'm going to flash up what you're working on, because I just mentioned it a minute ago, and it's like out of left field if you don't know what we're talking about. So this is a coping kit, part of a coping kit.
Yes. Our coping kit is fan-freaking-tastic. I wish that there was a class like this when I was going to give birth my second time.
Me too. So the things that Sarah is shipping out is this coping kit today that goes with the class. So as you're learning tools to get around certain situations that you're fearful about, how to make certain choices, if you're fearful, that I hear a lot on my YouTube channel, and we have a lot of really great comments that I want to highlight here. Fears being like, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to be able to have the birth that I want. I'm not going to be able to do it without the pain medication that I really don't want for myself. I'm not really going to know how to do it. These are the tools for those certain fears that we practice in our class that starts the 19th, called Fearless Birth Delivered. This is the delivered part.
Yes. And it's so, so good. Like, as I'm putting these together, Mandy and I, we started with like this list of some things that we wanted to add, like have in the coping kit that we thought would be really useful.
Yeah.
And then as we started talking about it, we were like, oh, but we definitely have to add this. Oh, but we totally have to add this too, and this too, and this too. And so like, it's become this huge collection of things to use during your labor and birth. And some of it can even be used postpartum and during pregnancy as well. So there's like a slew of things, really, really great things that we're super excited. I can't wait for the first person to get their coping kit and open it up.
It's the big priority mailbox.
Yes.
Sarah had to like let me down gently and was like, Mandy, this stuff is not going to fit in the small one. It's going to fit. It's huge. So we're trying to help like take away the power that fear has, which you've heard me say on my YouTube channel. Take away the power, write out your fears, talk out your fears, learn out your fears, get through them, figure out the dragon that you're slaying, the ride that you're about to go on, figure it out, uncover it, like reveal the truth under what is going to happen, what might happen, what won't happen, and what you have control over. And then being able to translate and do all of that through pregnancy, through those discomforts, through that 40-week, oh my God, I'm having heartburn that's going to kill me, or I peed a little, I'm not quite sure what to do, and I just want to be done being pregnant, but I don't, like, all these decisions are tearing at me. And labor and birth, taking it all there. You have a kit, you have the workbook, you have your flip book, you have a team of us, you have a whole created like private group, this whole cohort, which is what you get when you're in an in-person class. You make like, I call it forced family fun in my classes. I'm like, we are going to get to know each other. Tell us we play like 2 truths and a lie. True, honestly, in some of my classes. Yeah. I'm like, you are going to do uncomfortable, like get to icebreaker things because you will be friends after this. Because it's hard to find.
I think it's hard to not be friends with people who you're learning about this stuff with, because I know that like it's very specialized. So of course, people who aren't pregnant, well, actually that's a lie, because I do have people that aren't pregnant who take my classes, but people who don't like plan on having children or whatever, they're not going to come in and take this class. But so people imagine, okay, it's all going to be super focused on just birth and but actually it's like incredibly transformative sometimes, where people just have these like revelations where they're like, I had no idea about that about myself. I didn't even know this. Like,
or my
they were
partner
really like, yeah,
opens up.
yeah,
It can be emotional
it can be really emotional and really fun.
and really fun and really like, I'm embarrassed I didn't even know this about my own body, but neither did they. So like, cool, we're friends. So yeah, we give you that group, we give you that team. We're trying to like pad your team with this class as well. So today's the last day for the early bird special, if I didn't already say that. So you got to get in. Class starts the 19th. And you can't ticket sales end on the 13th anyway. I think we're going to sell out before that.
I do too. It's
And
been
Thursday. That's just in 2 days.
super exciting.
Ashley's story, there'll be a point. What'd you say?
Nothing. I just read Ashley's last comment.
This one?
No.
So Megan is not pregnant, but Megan is really scared to get pregnant again because of struggle with postpartum depression. This is the one I popped up.
Yep.
So if you all are new here, we are untangling birth fears and actually using them to our advantage. So you can put your fears down here. What else did I ask? Put your fears. Oh, tell us if you're already in the Fearless Birth Delivered class. We have a bunch of you here. I feel like I couldn't enjoy the early stages of my son's life because of it. I don't want that to happen again.
That is so hard and common. And that I don't like saying normalize, because postpartum depression isn't normal. It's common, but it's not normal. So we say commonize. It's actually something that I learned with the postpartum sport international training that I did. But they talk about how this is kind of getting down a rabbit hole, but a lot of times our postpartum experience is deeply influenced by our birth experience. And I'm not saying that everybody who has postpartum depression or postpartum mood disorder or postpartum anxiety disorder experienced some sort of trauma or were not satisfied with their birth. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when we can take control of our birth and we don't have like a birth that we don't, because when we're
a birth that we don't have to process.
Yeah.
A birth that we can just move on to the next stage and be like, there was the birth and here I am now.
Yeah. And
when you have to process your birth, that's what you're talking about, is like adding a layer to your postpartum experience.
Yes. Not only that, but when we talk about hormones and how our hormones affect the way that we bond with our baby and the way that we, move in, we're already having a really huge hormone imbalance, right? You add on top of that trauma and the stress from the trauma and all the hormones that go with that, and then trying to bond with the baby. Like, think about how it's hard, right?
It's a natural phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's not your block or you're incapable. It was natural phenomenon. It's survival mode.
Right. And so that can happen. There's also postpartum depression does also happen because of chemical imbalance. You could have the most perfect, beautiful birth that you wanted and still experience a postpartum mood disorder. So like, that's kind of just one aspect of it. But the people that I work with are usually people who are like, I had a really hard time last time. Mm-hmm. And I think it was directly tied to my childbirth. And I want this time to be different.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about that, it really is digging into fears, and it really is listing those fears and saying, okay, so what happened last time that you're wanting to like avoid this time? What happened last time that made you feel like you were unseen, unheard, like whatever, however you feel about it. And so that really does create a framework for how I work with those people. But Megan, I do want to hold space for you and let you know that like, it's not your fault. You're not alone. And it doesn't have to be like that every time. Personally, I had postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, bordering on like postpartum psychosis, very scary stuff for almost 2 years. And I recovered. And then after my second birth, I did not experience one lick of postpartum mood disorder, anxiety disorder. And it was, I believe, directly related to my birth being complete opposite.
Completely different. Your prep probably for postpartum was also very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, knowing what that could be like gives you options about, at least you know what you don't want. So you have to go dig and search for how you get what you do want.
Yes. 100.
Yeah. That's this, Sarah, I think I knew that about you, but I didn't really relate it as that exactly was my story too.
Yeah.
Postpartum depression, anxiety, medication, therapy, and second birth. That was not the case.
Yeah. It's
Totally
crazy.
different.
It was incredibly healing too. My second birth was so healing.
And it took years of work. Not that it takes years of work for everyone, but it did take a lot of healing, recovery, and then prep for the next time. Yeah. So Anna says, mine was being in labor and pain forever. That was her fear. That would happen forever because she didn't know what the process was. And also being a sexual abuse survivor, she wanted to escape the whole time. Escape mode, which makes it longer, makes it feel longer, and it physiologically can make it take longer.
That's when I was talking about earlier, you want to stay in that rest and digest instead of that fight or flight. And so sometimes whenever our hormones are not where they, like our headspace isn't right, so our hormones can't do what they're supposed to do, and it's really, really hard, especially for survivors. Totally.
It just takes a unique kind of prep.
Yes. And thank you very much for trusting us and sharing that information.
I know. These are incredible, and like such an honor to hear people's deep, dark secrets. Because I think it makes it also safe feeling, Sarah, when you say like it's hard. It is not easy to admit these and then work on them. But I really think the reason why people choose to go into a class and choose to join something, like we're kind of opening up what we do, topics we'll discuss in class, our passion parts about birth, and the like super juicy nuggets that we really want to be able to dig into. It's work. Like when people ask about this class, I'm like, it is work.
Yeah.
It's work if you want to get the most out of it. It's work. You commit, you do the work, there's time available to do it, and then you've done it. And it's huge.
It's not like math homework though. Y'all. So don't think that we're like giving you algebra that like you have to do at home.
No, it's not that.
Sometimes it can feel that daunting because it is uncomfortable, and it is like something that we as humans avoid because we get into an escape mode where we're like, I don't want to deal with this. Like I just want this uncomfortable, like I want it to be gone and stop.
Pack it down.
Right. Oh, I'm a packer. I'm such a packer.
We've talked about that. We just pack it way down.
It's so
eat my feelings.
So unhealthy. I'm like, you know what? I'll just work 75 hours this week, and then I won't have to think about it.
I don't know how to say your name. Natrinda Brenda says, I'm afraid of having longer labor than my first.
Yeah.
My first was 29 hours. I want a shorter one. I'm scared of tearing. I had an episiotomy and I don't want one this time.
Those are all very valid and common fears.
Yep.
Very common. Those are all fears that we address in our class too. First, and these are ones that like I know for sure we go in depth on, and like we talk about how the physiology of birth, how to encourage birth to happen quicker.
Right. Progress.
Yeah. So.
Right. I think Jessica is referencing when we were talking about postpartum depression, just because, hey, Jessica, just because I know you, whatever number that is, 100 million% true for Jessica, that she had two vastly different birth experiences as well.
Yeah.
So I guess like props to the person and the people here trying to have a different experience. It is totally possible. You at least, now what you don't want. It doesn't make it worth it necessarily, except I'm sure you can find ways that it did make it worth it, but it's still shitty and it still sucks. But having a blind path is very different than having a path, even if it includes, this is what I don't want. But we do encourage you to go learn how to get the things that you do want, because it's just like I say, and I give this example all the time.
I love this example.
Is it when Wes is learning how to ride his bike?
I used it the other day, actually. And I didn't want to be
Because
like
it
my
happened
friend.
the other day. What?
I didn't want to be like my friend Mandy, so I totally plugged Benny in, but it was still applicable, and I absolutely I use it. I love this.
Yes, because when my son is learning how to ride his bike, and we always say, like, steer clear of people. Obviously, he knows he doesn't want to run into someone. So the other day, he was riding his bike and doing really well until this person got out of their car and walked onto the sidewalk. And he wanted to avoid them. And he could. He had space, but all he could do was focus on the person that he didn't want to hit. And so he swerved right into that person. That person had to do a whole, like, Funniest Home Videos, dramatic, like, jump out of the way, hug the back of their minivan and, like, cling on to avoid my son, like, completely tearing into them because he couldn't take his eyes off where he didn't want to go. If he could just focus on the enormous path over here on this side, the world is wide open to you, bad boy. Like, go on that way. You have all this room. But instead he was like, so same with birth. And there's like there's something, it's like law of attraction or something. If you focus on the things that you don't want to have happen, like when people are like, I just don't want to tear, I just don't want to tear, I just don't want to tear. Well, did you learn how to not tear? Or, avoid tearing, or doing all that you can to try to not tear and focus on that. Teach your partner about that. Discuss it with your provider. Like, write it in your care plan. Did you try focusing on that? Because if you just say, I don't want to tear, I don't want to tear, I don't want to tear, we do the same thing over and over, we get the same results.
Yeah.
You might be disappointed. Totally not saying it's your fault if you tore. That was a bad example. But that is a very common thing that I hear people like beeline focus on. I'm like, please don't. Please focus on the positions you can try, the hot compress, the how to relax your pelvic floor, and let's start practicing that instead of like, I'm clenched up because now is when I push and I just don't want to tear.
Yeah.
That actually heightens your risk for tearing.
Yes.
But you don't know because you're not in fearless birth delivered yet.
Jessica, right. Jessica, I would like to hear, if you don't mind sharing, what you did to prepare, if you did anything to prepare to have a different birth experience or a different postpartum experience the second time. Ashley. I don't know what about pregnancy makes people think that they can be this personal with you if you don't invite them in that space.
Suddenly everyone has a comment about your orgasms.
Thanks for the advice, guys.
Ma'am in Kroger, I see you're pregnant. Are you planning on a sexually positive birth experience? Like, what?
Although I will say orgasmic birth is a thing and really, really interesting and incredible. There's a book on it. If you're interested, read the book. It's really, really interesting. Really interesting stuff.
Anna, we got you. We got you, chapstick. It's a good one. Hey, Lisa. Glad you're watching. Ashley, my biggest fear, to be completely honest, is traveling with work through COVID, right? I still have to make a few trips to schools, 2 counties away, an hour away from where I live. So I'm silently freaking out about going into labor away from home, or worse, while you're traveling on the road. Yep. Totally hear that fear. Totally.
Yeah. And Ashley, you're in our class. We're going to talk about fears, and you'll have the opportunity to kind of open up about it, and we can really talk through that too. So keep that in your back pocket, and we'll bring it up in class and talk it through for sure.
I am going for a VBAC. Hey, Melissa.
Yay, VBAC.
Currently 37 weeks and 5 days. I fear labor stalling and ending in another C-section ended with hemorrhage and scary hour after the baby was born.
Yeah. That's really, and if we're thinking about where that fear comes from, that comes from trauma, right? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't want to I'm not trying to put a word on your experience. So if that's not how you interpret that, feel free to correct me. But this is not uncommon. This is like we've said a trillion times before, a lot of both of our clients are people who have had an experience before that makes them fear the experience coming up. So with this is hard because it's not just a fear that you heard from a story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a fear that like you've learned through, social conditioning or whatever. This is something that you experienced. And so it does take a little bit more digging deep and figuring out what your individual benefits and risks are and how you can work to not have your labor stall and what you can do to have a successful VBAC. If you haven't already worked with Mandy, I would totally recommend talking to her.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I think that you would totally benefit from talking to Mandy. I mean, 37 weeks, 5 days. I would say take Fearless Birth Delivered and like we talk about this stuff, but you're kind of near the end. So talking with Mandy might really be
Yeah, we can do a fast track too. If you really want some nitty-gritty juicy stuff, mandyirby.com, or just find me on social media and you can message me. We can dig into some of that together. And we do really productive digging in. It's not talk. It's like, here are things the way you can move your body every day. And here are things that you can do with your fears and things like that. So Jessica answered your question. We got to go. I'm going to say we got to go. It's kind of like when I call my grandma, hey grandma, how you doing? I got to go, but I just wanted to say, we talked for like an hour.
Yeah.
I learned it from my dad. So we're going to go. We got to go get ready for class because we've got a few things to do. And Sarah's got to ship her coping kits. But Jessica answered your specific question.
Mm-hmm.
She said, what did she do differently the first versus the second to have two different experiences? She did all the things.
Yeah.
She had a 3-day labor at 42 weeks with her first. There was a huge list of, I don't want to again. So she took Spinning Babies with Mandy, educated herself on tongue ties with tons of research and meeting with IBCLC antenatally.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And had plans in place with her doula, her partner, and her providers being OB and therapist for postpartum depression.
Look at you go, Jessica.
Yeah, she's a effing
Giving
force.
you a virtual high five because that's what I'm talking about, being proactive.
Yeah.
Being proactive is so great. Making sure that I mean,
she padded her team.
Mm-hmm.
She had people in place. We talked about finding that IBCLC that really knew oral anatomy, total expert on newborn feeding, so that she could cut to the chase and be like, just had a baby 3 hours ago. I need you. And she knew that provider. She had her credit card in her website. When you're ready, in case you need something, you pack it in the bag and you take it with you. So the number was on the phone, hey, nice to meet you. Can we have a session? And I need your cell phone number.
Yes. I love that you said that. When you need something, you put it in your bag and you have it ready, or when you think you're going to need it. You don't wait until you need it and then go search for it at Walmart and hope it's there.
Because you're effing postpartum. Yes.
Good. So good. Kudos, Jessica. Great
Thanks.
job.
Thanks,
I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. And you did that. You should be proud. You did that.
Having the plans she said having the plans in place for if this does happen was huge for my mental health. Yes. I feel the same way for planning. Even if it happens, I want to feel like I did everything I could. Yeah. And feel confident that this is what happens. And it wasn't because someone didn't tell me, or it wasn't because, I didn't do enough on my own. So Lisa is, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, and it's not really, I mean, it's huge for your mental health, but also it's stacking the cards in your favor. And
Right.
I think that even if you're not a planner, this is still going to be effective and good practice. Yeah.
Good practice. And like the culture we should be teaching the millennials coming up. And what's beyond millennials? What are our kids? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Gen 2020. We should be setting an example. We should be teaching them like, oh gosh, are you prepping yet? You're 20 weeks? Not like, are you having a boy or a girl on your
Right.
ultrasound? It should be like, what class are you taking in early pregnancy versus later? Because like, I know what you should take later. And like, who's your IBCLC at 23 weeks?
Yeah. Like why
Those are the
is
things
it
that should be the culture that we're starting to change in each other. So like,
Mhm.
Jessica is not the odd one out. Jessica's telling all of her friends now.
Yeah.
Jessica knew who to go to for questions, and now she's going to tell her friends and be like, girl, I
Right.
didn't give you diapers for your baby shower. I got you the hook up with my IBSCLC.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I set you up with Mandy one-on-one for an hour. I gave you
That's so good.
a deposit on your doula, Sarah, and she's going to virtual doula. I started your deposit. It's like giving someone a goldfish, like, "Oh, thanks." But I wouldn't say, like, you choose someone's doula for them, but you could say, "I give you an hour of postpartum doula services."
Yeah.
Right? Like, that
Imagine like yeah.
is incredible.
Yeah. It's really yeah. And we talk about this too in the class. We talk about how having a plan is important, and not only for your birth but also for postpartum, and when you should start doing that and how we do that, and who needs to be a part of it and all of that.
The long haul. All right, y'all. We so appreciate your interactiveness,
Yes.
hanging out with us. We always go longer than we mean to, but it's just so fun and juicy. This is the graphic that you should be sharing when you are in, so you can tell your friends that you are making a commitment. It also makes a commitment to yourself and to your partner. You're committed to learning and practicing and having the birth that you want. And saying it out loud is not taboo. Like you can do that. So we hope to be able to add you to the Facebook group today so you can pick out your rebozo, save yourself time, stop searching through all of those YouTube videos, and really commit to this time. And then you're done. Then you're to the next side. Then you're just practicing what you've already learned. And you're in the group, like hanging with your new friends.
Yeah, and practicing with us, hanging out with us.
Hanging with us. So you already know what you're going to get. It's us. It's more of us. It's straight talk, really bad jokes, stories about my kid, and lots of like pushing faces. This is my perineum. This is my relaxed perineum. There's like a ton of that.
Yeah.
Can't help
And
it.
also me being chatty Cathy and always like
And me like cutting Sarah off. And I'm going to have like time's up. Lots of that. It's going to be a total blast. So we hope to see you there. Fill our last 3 spots so we can stop talking about it. And we'll see you in class on the